All right, I want to begin here this morning by asking a simple question. The question is this: is there a day of the week that you tend to be more overwhelmed than others? And if there is a day of the week, let me just hear. What day is it? Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday through Friday, every day of the week. Saturday is good for you though, Terry? For me, it seems to be Thursday night, and so I think I know why. So I was kind of thinking through this. Part of my reason I tend to get a little overwhelmed on Thursday is because I know that Sunday is coming. Now, for a lot of you, Friday, you're thinking about revving down. I'm thinking about revving up, and so I'm starting to feel the weight and the pressure of Sunday and knowing that it's here. And so I find that I live in this tension of wanting every Sunday to be awesome, and yet knowing that that's just not reality. I mean, for me, in terms of what I'm looking for and what I want it to be where we hit a home run every Sunday and everybody's excited and, ready to take on the world and, wow, here we come and here we go. And if you can't relate with that, then that's okay. But that's my heart. I want every Sunday to be the best, and yet I know that's just not always reality. And so I find myself, I don't want to make too much of Sunday to where it really overwhelms me because I'm just allowing the pressure just to crush me and feel like I have to hit a home run because if I don't, who's going to miss out? And then on the other side of that too, I don't want to take it too lightly. I think about even today, I find as a pastor, it's hard to compete. Somebody mentioned at the first gathering with the religion of football, religion of Seahawks, right? You can be a Seahawks fan, but it's amazing how much focus, energy, and stuff that we can put into football. And so I knew, if people are going to make choices to stay home and do their thing and stuff. So part of me says, well, you know what? I want to hold back. People aren't, And then another side of me says, no, if just one person is here, they're worth my best. That I'm going to give everything I have to this. And so I live in that tension. So this past Thursday, remember Thursday, kind of the day I tend to, feel a little bit overwhelmed. I drove up to the house after work, and here's what I drove up to. I drove up, and it's been this way for a while, but there is my gutter. Live in the Northwest, you live among trees, and your gutter's going to be full of pine needles, and it's going to back up. And my gutters, I think, are full more than they are empty. Just paid somebody to come and clear them out, and they're already full again. And so there's this big old water spout, just coming down right in front of my garage. And right away, I feel overwhelmed. And you may not be like that, but here's how I am sometimes. Things will go, and they won't bother me, and then all of a sudden, they'll kind of start stacking up. So I walk in, and so I drive in, and it's the gutter. And then I go inside, and, you just start noticing little things wrong with your house, and you live with it, and then all of a sudden you're overwhelmed in one area, and then it's all of a sudden, man, I'm really starting to feel overwhelmed, and it's really bothering me. And so then I start thinking about the backed up gutters. I start thinking about the roof that's temporary fix in a section over my kitchen, because we've had a leaking vent there for probably before we bought the house, but it really became a problem over the last couple of years, and it was so scary, the sheetrock's starting to dip, and all the texture's coming off. And here's my thought. I know I'm a little scared of what is behind the sheetrock, so you try to ignore it. Finally, I couldn't ignore it anymore because it's just about ready to fall. And so pull it off, and of course, it's bad. And so now there's sheetrock up there. I'll get to it hopefully in the spring. But you start thinking about that. I start thinking about all my appliances that either, freeze milk or don't work right. And my dishwasher, the two little clips that go up underneath for the counter, the screws are all stripped out, and so now you can just pull the whole dishwasher and just come out. We have drawers you pull out, and if you don't catch it, it'll just fall right in the ground. Hey, you get it, right? You have things in your life. It's just like that. There's always something to do, always something to fix, always something demanding your time, demanding your attention, wanting you to come and fix it right. Yeah, that's life, but anybody else get overwhelmed by those things as well? All right. Okay, so you're tracking with me a little bit. That's the reality. Life can be overwhelming sometimes. Remove all of those things, life can still be overwhelming sometimes. And then on top of that, we like to add things to our lives that make it a little bit overwhelming at times. Think about it. We can overcomplicate. We can be guilty of overscheduling. We can be guilty of taking too much on. We can be guilty of being unwilling to say no because we want to please people. I don't want anybody to feel bad or to think less of me, so I'm just going to be the yes man, and so I'm going to say yes to everything. I can be one of those people. It's a good thing I have a wife that can say no for me. And she's all about, okay, you need to establish your own boundaries in your life. But we want to please people. We want our kids to experience a lot. So what do? We're shuttling them all over the place. They're at this practice, that practice. They're experiencing this, taking lessons there. They're all over the map. Why? Because we want our kids to experience things. Is that a bad thing? No, that's a great thing. But sometimes it just adds on, and it keeps piling on, and then we begin to feel it in our lives, and we're busy. Here's the thing. Many of us are overcommitted, and we're stretched too thin, and we're overwhelmed. You ever get overwhelmed? This morning I want to talk about one small thing that can make a big difference, that can help if we're feeling overwhelmed. Last Sunday I talked about the difference that one word can make. How one small word can make a big difference. And I appreciate that we've tried to make it a part of our conversation. So I've been asking some of you, what is your one word? I came home and I asked my kids, what is their one word? And they looked at me like, I have to do that too? That'd be a great idea if you did. And so have them thinking about their one word and how that one word can impact their life over the course of 2015. And I heard things like, be real, heart, peacemaker, press in, just a number of different things. And so if you've not heard or you've not thought about your one word, I want to encourage you, think about what is your one word. It could be focus, recalibrate. What is your one word? So thank you for sharing your one word. And if you've not yet thought too much about your one word, I want to encourage you, think about it. I mean, that's the whole point. Think about things sometimes. Right? I know that it's hard because sometimes, again, we're so busy and cluttered that it's hard to think about things. But this is something that can help us in our lives, that can bring and add value to who we are and to what we're doing. And the point is how amazing it is that one small thing can make such a big difference in our lives. Although one boundary wasn't on my radar last week, after Thursday, coming home, kind of experiencing this, I felt like, this is life. So I really felt at that point that the Holy Spirit was leading me in that direction. And so I've added one boundary to this series on small things and how they make a big difference in our lives. Because I really believe this. You might not be overwhelmed tonight, right? You might be here and just be at peace, experiencing shalom in your life, all is well, and I just love being. But I know that you might not be that way tomorrow or next week. And so the reality is that there's something that each of us, I think, can take away from this morning. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus, using language, using illustrations, stories, he used things that were common to his audience that they would understand and connect with. And he told the story of a farmer who went out to sow some seeds. Now, are any of you farmers in here today? Right? We might not really connect too much with the whole farmer concept. It's not a big part of our culture, but I know some of you are gardeners. Marvin and Ivan there in the back, man, we are blessed because they have a garden. They share their strawberries with us, and it's just amazing. But some of you garden, and so you understand the principle of a seed and the importance of a seed and taking care of that seed and cultivating it and planting it in the right soil and all of those things. But Jesus tells a story, and in this story, he tells about a farmer, again, who went out to sow some seed. And as he began to sow those seeds, scatter them, he says in chapter 13 of Matthew, he says that some fell on the side of the road. Now, think about that. Seed that falls on the side of the road really doesn't have a chance at all to grow. And so Jesus said the seed was sown there, and those seeds were eaten by the birds. The birds came and they ate them up, and off they went. Next, Jesus says that some soil fell on hard soil. In other words, there wasn't much ground there. It was too hard for any deep roots to take take root and happen. And so it was there when the sun came out and there wasn't the nutrients and stuff for that seed to stay alive, that the sun scorched the seed and the plant died. Then Jesus told about another seed that fell among thorns. And I think we're all pretty familiar with thorns and know that thorns, they're just no respecter of any other plant. They don't care what you are or what you're occupying. They want to take your space. They want to push you out of the garden, right? They want to push you out. And in that sense, that's their goals. They want to occupy. And they're not just content with their own space. They want the space of all the other plants in the garden as well. In reference to that seed that fell among the thorns, this is what Jesus had to say. Jesus said, "And the one on whom seed was sown among the thorns," okay, speaking about a seed that was sown in a man's heart. He said, "This is the man who hears the word," so the seed is planted there. And it says, notice, "And the worry of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful." Can I say this morning? Jesus wants us to be fruitful, to live fruitful lives, to have joy in our life, to be people of peace, to be productive and fruitful. But Jesus told this story, in reference to this story, he's talking about that seed that grows up and that seed that is unable to become fruitful because something is happening. The life of God is being choked out of that person's life. Now, that word in the Greek, the word really, what it means is it means to be drawn in a different direction. The word worry, so it means to be drawn in a different direction. It also carries within it the idea of cares, right? We all have cares, things that happen in life. The cares of life choke out the life of God. We become so consumed and distracted with other things. It's the idea of anxiety. So here's the reality of life. If we do not manage our schedules, if you do not manage your schedule, if I don't manage my schedule, someone else will for us. Somebody else will manage your schedule for you. If we don't manage it well, there will be consequences. And here we find the consequences of not managing our lives well. The life of God will be choked out of us. We'll be so distracted, so caught up on all these other things that the life of God, the place that He was to occupy in our lives, in our hearts, right? He'll be pushed out. And we'll be left distracted, unfocused, overstretched, doing things we shouldn't be doing. Right? Caught up in passions that really aren't passions. Or they may be a passion, but we're so spread so thin that we're really not effective in that area of passion. We'll find ourselves drawn in different directions because that space that God was to occupy has now been pushed out. Have you ever found yourself in that place before where the life of God is being pushed out? The place that He was to occupy is being forced out. Now think about it. The life of God is more likely to be choked out in our lives when we're not managing our lives well. When we're not managing our schedules. When our schedules are out of control. When we aren't doing a good job of setting boundaries, of having parameters, of understanding our limits. And by managed schedule, I mean schedules that involve margin. That has margin built into it. Now here's what margin is. Margin is having the time to breathe. Margin allows us to breathe deeply, to be at a place where we can pull away from the grind of life and be able to have rest, to be able to take a deep breath, to be able to allow our minds, all the things going on and all the things we have to do and all the demands that are going on, for those things to kind of settle and for us to just be. So that we can exist and be healthy as people. That's what margin provides. So margin allows us to breathe deeply. And here's what I find, and you may not totally agree with this, but I sometimes think that sometimes we equate spirituality to busyness. So somehow if we're busier, we're more spiritual. Because we have things to do and people to see and places to go. And so if I'm busy, that means I'm real really spiritual. And sometimes we play it off that way, that if my phone's not ringing off the hook, I must not be important. Well, the amount of times your phone rings off the hook doesn't necessarily mean that, right? So it's important to realize that margin is about understanding that. It's not necessarily a sign of spirituality. And in fact, the opposite of that could actually be true, where we're so busy and consumed that it's really pulling us away from where we should be. Connecting with Him, right? Being able to be present. Sometimes we're busy running and rushing from one thing to another, and some of you have heard this story before. I just relate it to my own life. I've been there, and I don't want to go back. I was a youth pastor, and it's more than a full-time job. Between camps and Mexico trips and fundraisers and sporting events, and so I was doing that. My wife is at home, and she's working 30 hours a week and homeschooling our kids, and so she's busy and a lot of things going on. And then I was coaching at the high school and leading a program for girls volleyball. Had that going on, and so that occupied a lot of my summer, and then into the early fall. And then at this particular time, we were building the house and highly involved in that process because I had to do all the painting and all the site work and make sure the road's in, do the concrete, all the things that go on, make sure the deck's done. And so here was my life. I was just rushing literally from one thing to another. And always very anxious when I got there. Am I late? Can I be on time? Is the bus going to wait for me? I have to get the house thing done. I need to be home because I am a dad, and I love being a dad, and I am a husband. All those things. And so I found myself just stretched, and I've had conversations with my wife, but I often think, I probably wasn't good at any of those things. Probably wasn't a great dad during that time. Probably wasn't a great husband. Probably wasn't a great coach. Probably wasn't a great youth pastor because my mind was so drawn in so many different directions and distracted by all these things. I know that it affected me on some level, or many levels. So it's that idea of when we have some boundaries in our lives, it helps us to be able to bring and focus in and maybe do a couple of things and do those things well. So maybe you've been there. If you're in a rush, maybe there's some things that you can change in your life that will help free you up to build and bring some margin. I want to be fruitful. I want to love God with everything. I want to love people. I want to show kindness to others. I want to live in the resurrection power. I want to have self-control. I want to have joy even in horrible circumstances. I want to experience a peace that doesn't make sense to anybody else. I want to be gentle with the people closest to me. I want to be present. I want to live in the moment and not be distracted and somewhere else all the time. And yet, in our world, I think that is the overwhelming thing that kind of happens is we're not present. And if we are, we're distracted because our minds are cluttered and we have so many things going on and so many places and demands put on us that it affects us. We get overwhelmed. One boundary can make a big difference. So here's what I want to suggest this morning. Instead of trying to do everything, why not do a few things? Instead of trying to do everything, why not do a few things? So when I get overwhelmed, it's important for me to remember this, that I can't do everything. But listen, I can do something. So I may not be able to do everything, but I can do something, and it's important when I get overwhelmed to remind myself of that, to remember that I can't do everything, but I can do something. I have my limitations, you have your limitations. This is exactly what a boundary is and why it's important to talk about it. Coming to grips with the reality that I cannot do everything, embracing my limitations as a person, as a father, as a leader, as a husband. It's important. For some of us, I think that sometimes the idea of limitations is kind of like an evil word. It's like, if you're a guy, it's this idea, if you're a guy and you're limited, somehow you're weak. Or even a gal and, you're limited, that somehow you have weakness in your life. Well, you know what? We're all weak, and we're to embrace weakness to a certain respect, and that's learning to be okay with limitations. We have them. So why not embrace them? Let's not live in fear of them. Let's make them our friend. So in that sense, if you want to put up the next slide, Russ, is limitations are not my enemy. Thought I'd throw that out there for any football fans here this morning. Green Bay Packers may or may not be your enemy this morning, but limitations are not. In Matthew 14:23, Jesus, so next chapter over, Jesus just finished exerting himself among a lot of people. He was instrumental in seeing 5,000 people fed. I mean, there was more than 5,000 people there, but men, women, children, they were fed. Just had this incredible moment with them, teaching them. And it's there in verse 23, it says that Jesus does something pretty remarkable. It says he sends the crowds away. Go home. The 12 probably were lingering a little bit, and it's there that Jesus said, okay, you guys need to go too. So he sent the 12 away. Made a point of sending the crowd and the disciples. He says, go away. And it's there that he went to a place to be alone and to pray. Why is this significant? This is significant because this was Jesus' response to his limitations. Even Jesus was limited in his capacity of what he could give out and be a part of before he needed to be energized, before he needed to rest, before he needed to be still. Right, so he sent them all away, and then it says that he went and he spent time with his Father all night. He embraced his limitation. Now, if you were to come over to my house, honestly, I'm a little bit embarrassed by my garage right now. Okay, confession time. All right, so don't show up later and want to see my garage. Wait until I clean it. We have, a big family, so we do have some stuff. I mean, we work really hard to keep things simple, to not accumulate things in our house, and we're always going through the kids' rooms. It's amazing how much stuff they accumulate. We throw away 2 or 3 bags every 2 months, and you're like, I mean, how does this happen? It does. So, we have clothes that need to be passed down. Sammy stores those in bins. All that stuff is in the garage, Christmas stuff. 9 sleeping bags, 10, all those things you guys do, you have, and just add a few more to it sometimes. And then we like to burn, and so I have wood in my garage, and so that makes a whole other mess, and at least it's outside of the rain. We have, all the bikes and just the stuff. Amy thinks I have a lot of tools, and I don't want to get rid of any of my tools. But, those things just are part of our lives, and I'm kind of overwhelmed by it. But here's where I'm going with that, is my garage is a mess. So again, when I kind of get overwhelmed, things kind of pile up. And so it's my gutter, it's my roof, it's my appliances, and it's my garage. So, it's all of those things, and it's there that I have to remind myself what is most important in this situation. It's the relationships. Really, my relationships are more important than my gutter. I can't do it all. I can do something, but I can't do it all. A couple of Sundays ago, or Saturdays ago, when it was a beautiful Saturday, if you would have came to our house, we were outside in the cul-de-sac with all the neighbor kids, and we were playing football. And just had an awesome time playing together with all the kids and stuff. So I made choices. I could have cleaned my garage or I made a choice to play with my kids. Now, I don't always make that choice. Sometimes I just chill. Sometimes I'm not very motivated. So whether I'm not motivated or I'm being intentional, when I feel overwhelmed, it's important for me to remember what's most important. So that means I have to be able to live with the leaky gutter, the leaky roof, and all the other stuff that comes with being a homeowner. But we all make choices in that, right? But when I do other things, sometimes I'm just not motivated again, and other times I do not do some things because of some boundaries that I've established, because some things I've said are more important than others. And you may do things differently, and that's okay. But I just want us to think about how that plays out in our lives. So I've come to realize my garage is going to get cleaned up sometime. Yeah, when the kids move out. I may watch football with others. I may help someone move. Go to the movies with my wife. Spend money on vacation. Because those things are important to us because of the value that we place on relationships. I can't do it all, but I can do something. My garage may be dirty, but I'm going to be present in my kids' life. When I'm overwhelmed, I have to remind myself what is most important here. I will get to the dirty garage. I will get to the gutter. Let's keep it in perspective. So I want to ask, what if you and I were to think about and to determine to do just 3 things well in our lives? So think about your life. Think about what you do. Think about 3 things. What if you were to do those 3 things really well? How would that change your life? How would that free up space in your life? How might that declutter your mind? 3 things. As a church, every year we try to do this. What are 3 things that we're going to do really well this year? We're going to put our energy, our time, and our focus into doing these 3 things. And we're going to try to do those 3 things well. What if you and I did that with our lives? Imagine how that might change your life, simplify your life, free you up to pursue the things that really are important to you. Free you up so you can have some margin to be able to sit down and just be. And be okay. That somebody's not demanding something of you or requiring something of you in the present. I heard another leader say this week in a podcast that I was listening to. He said that learning what you say yes to can actually help us to know what to say no to. So if we've learned what we're saying yes to, that will help us to know what we're going to say no to. Do you know the things that you're saying yes to? If you know those things, it'll help you to say no to the other things that might kind of come in and clutter and demand more of you than what you should be willing to give or can be willing to give. So what 3 things do you want to do well? Small thing, big difference. All right, so instead of trying to do everything, why not do a few things? And secondly, instead of trying to be all things to all people, why not be a few things to a few people? Now, I understand that we're all wired a little bit different because some of us are extroverts and we want to just be with people. And some of us are introverts and we're fine just being with a few people. And I know that comes into play, with our relationships and things we're able to do. But again, the idea here is that less can be more. Even on a relational level. Think about it. You cannot attend every graduation party. So if you know which ones you can, and then you can say no to the ones that you can't. Right? If you know what you're saying yes to, that'll help you in saying you cannot attend. I know some of you are in the candlelight parties and light their products and stuff. Right? You can't attend every candlelight party. Cannot meet every need, have every answer. You cannot be the guy or the gal that fixes everybody's problems, that fixes everyone and everything. You can try, but listen. What we're going to find is the life of God being what? Choked out of us. Pushed out. And if that's been your mentality, it sounds exhausting to me. But what if you took just a different approach? What if you realized that you could be a really good friend to a few people and began to order your life around that concept? Now, it doesn't mean that you just start cutting people off. I'm not saying that at all. But if you know, right, here's the 3 or 4, here's the relationships that I'm really committed to, and then worked on those and gave yourself to those, doesn't mean you cut those other people off, but it means, hey, I'm really bringing some focus, intention to these. Now, if you're like me, you've heard Paul say something like in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, he says, I've learned to be all things to all people that I might win a few. Verse 33, anybody go there in your mind? Well, doesn't Paul say we're supposed to be all things to all people? Well, let's back up and let's think about that for a second. What is Paul referring to? What is Paul speaking to? Paul's speaking out of a vocational calling. He's speaking out of a passion. And what is his passion? To win people to Christ, for them to experience this amazing grace, the reality of what Paul experienced. And that's his passion. That's what he's devoted his life to. And so you'll find there, if you go to 1 Corinthians 9, that Paul lays it out there, and you'll find that he says, to the Jew, I'm Jewish. To the Greek, to the non-Gentile, I know how to, basically what he's saying is I know how to relate with all people. Being a Jew, of course, he knows how to relate with the Jews. He grew up in an area of the world where a lot of Greeks and influenced by Greek and Roman culture, and so he knew how to relate with non-Jews as well. The Greeks and other people. So what Paul was saying is that he wants to be able to relate on a level, in a context where people are at. Not require them to be brought up to his level, but for him to be able to meet them exactly where they're at. He says, I want to be able to relate with people exactly where they're at so that I can win them, reach them for Christ. Show them what it means to be in a loving, relationship with God. So he wasn't saying, just be all things to all people. He's saying, know how to relate with people. Know how to connect with them. Meet them on their terms. Meet them on their grounds. So if you found yourself kind of going there, I just wanted to make sure that you thought through that a little bit, that there is a cultural context to what Paul was saying. So let's bring it back and let's think again about, kind of wrap things up here with limitations. If what we have is limited, and if we understand those limits and learn to work within those limits, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that we'll be able to know and have freedom to move in what we're saying yes to, and it'll be easier for us to say no. So it'll be easier for us to say yes to certain things, and it'll be easier for us to say no to certain things. That's why it's a good idea to embrace the idea of limitations. I have them, you have them. It makes it easier. And here's the thing, why? Because we have learned to be comfortable in our own skin. And this may be a process for each and every one of us, right? Depending on our personality type and our experiences. Some of us very much want to be people pleasers. Some of us don't care about being people pleasers. And so it's easier maybe for you to say no, but for those that want to please people, you have to learn to be comfortable in your own shoes and say, if I do say no, I have to be able to be okay. And hopefully those people that I say no to will be okay with me as well. So it's having the courage to do it and to live that way. Are you comfortable with your own skin? So when I'm comfortable in my own skin, I don't have to have every answer. I don't have to meet every need. I'm okay with my limitations. And think about it in the process too. This provides other opportunity for other people to rise up. If I'm really passionate about water and helping people with clean water, and then somebody starts talking to me about poverty and how there are thousands of kids that are hungry every day. And so now I'm giving to clean water and I'm giving to providing food for kids. Somebody else comes in and their passion is the sex trade. And so now, man, I don't want anybody to live in slavery. So now I'm going to get involved in that. So now I'm going to get to that as well. Somebody else comes with another cause. And pretty soon I am passionately giving myself to 10 different causes. So what I just did is I took my dollar and I just spread it 10 different ways. Are all of those things good? If we could and we didn't have limitations, would we want to get involved in all of those areas? For sure, why not? But because we do have limitations, we have to think sometimes about what can we do to make the biggest difference. And one of those little changes would be to, hey, what are 2 passions that I get involved with? And I'm going to put my focus and my energy and my money into those 2 things. See what it does then, if I'm focused here, then I'm believing that other people are going to respond and be focused in these other areas. Don't you think God's big enough to move in other people's hearts to get involved in these different areas. So it's embracing our limitations, understanding that, and then providing opportunity and believing that other people will rise up and fill in places as well. So boundaries help us to do more with less, and they help us to be present. To be present. One boundary, one small thing, big difference. Can make a big difference in our lives.